Welcome to Winning the Divine Lottery. I'm your host, Amy Dawns.
Hi, Karaleigh. I'm so excited to have you here today. I just want to say that when I first listened to your podcast that you sent me, I was moved like to tears. And I remember leaving you a voice memo and I was actually crying on it. And then it didn't even end up sending properly. So I had to re-record it. And by then my tears kind of had left me. But I really wanted to speak to that because the whole reason for me starting this podcast was around this one core belief that we're good enough. And that's what you were talking about on your podcast. And I was sitting here before we hopped on today for this amazing conversation that I know is just going to flow so beautifully and effortlessly and with so much grace. And I couldn't even really truly remember exactly what it was that you said, but I remember how I felt. And that was really, really vital to me because I'm a firm believer. It's not necessarily what we say, but how we say it and the place that it's coming from. And it was so genuine and so sincere. And I could feel your passion and even in your pain and wanting people to understand like how truly good enough we are. And you shared some of your story on that. And I would love to dive into that in a second. But
Yeah.
I also want to say one thing is you sent me over your bio, and the last thing that you said on there was anything is possible when we can retrain our brain to seek sunshine. And that is a prelude into your podcast, which is called Seeking Sunshine. And you also have an album called Seeking Sunshine.
Yep.
So could we start there? Like, would you mind just broadening us on that question? Like, how did you get to the point that you were able to retrain your brain to seek sunshine?
Oh my gosh, I love that question so much. So seeking sunshine, it actually starts from the darkness. Seeking sunshine is all about looking for the brightness. It's about looking for the positivity when you're not there yet. And the reason that I know that is because I wasn't there. Like I wasn't there always. And you talk about my story is that I have 3 kids with special needs and my husband has been disabled for a decade. And so I have a lot of experience with living in dark places of, my husband has a lot of mental illnesses and trying to raise 3 kids who are struggling with my partner who is really, really struggling. Like, it's like my whole life's work to just find something to help me keep going when I feel like my life's crumbling around me. And as I created my podcast and I created my album, it was like, how do I find a reason? How do I find something? How do I find something to cling to pull me out of this? Because it's not even just for me, it's for them. I cannot give up on them. They deserve a mom who can be that stable foundation, and they desperately needed me to be that, for their whole lives. Like my husband needed me to be that because I couldn't crumble because everybody else was crumbling, you know?
I
And
got
so that's,
goosebumps when you said that.
yeah. And so it was like, how do I, stay sane? How do I stay the person that they need me to be? And it was by finding the sunshine, finding something to be grateful for all the time. And sometimes that was something really small. Sometimes that was something crazy, like straight up crazy. And I can give examples of that. And it's so funny because I look back now and I'm like, I would not do those things now. I have my head on straighter. And these are things like I used to make all of my family matching Halloween costumes, like from scratch, because I studied sewing in college. And so I would like make us these really elaborate Halloween costumes. And I'm like, I don't do that anymore. But I would go super overboard, like decorating my house and making things. And I was like, I needed something to focus on. I needed
Yeah,
something that I could control that was beautiful.
I love
And
that.
making beauty is powerful.
I want to unpack so many things in what you just shared in a few minutes, maybe even less. Oh, So for me, I know even in my life that sometimes that can be really hard. And not that we're ever supposed to compare each other's stories, but what sharing stories do for us, in my opinion, is it gives us a different perspective because it gives us something else that is existing in the world and an experience for somebody else that can maybe give us a break from what we're experiencing and being like, okay, well, if this person is going through all this and can still find the brightness and the beautiful in their daily lives, then it's possible for me too. So, can you remember maybe
I was going
even
to say, that's exactly what it is. I love comparing stories because it shows us what's possible. And there's this thing that they say that, like, if you threw all your problems in a pile with everyone else in the world, you would take your own problems back. And there's sometimes that I doubt that a little bit. But like, I've
yeah.
interviewed enough people on my own podcast that I'm like, sometimes that's really true, and it's like other people going through their battles and then telling us about it shows us what humans are capable of.
Right? Like so much. Like my whole body is just lit up right now. Can you think of one specific time that comes to mind when I ask you that first moment when you knew that you had to start living a little bit differently and start seeking the sunshine in your life? Can you think of like one time that comes to mind when I ask you that?
Um, no. um, most of what it all comes in hindsight. It comes so much more for me in hindsight, and I wish that was less of the case, but that is the honest truth. Is that as I look back on like as I look back on the really tough stuff, which really is not a great way to say that because my current reality is also pretty tough, depending on you know how I choose to talk about it. Like what I'm currently going through is not an easy life. I still have 3 kids with special needs. Like life's not easy now. But like my husband's in his disability is doing a lot better physically. He used to collapse multiple times a week and I'd have to carry him to bed, and he's a lot bigger than me. So that was a thing. I didn't really Hindsight brings so much clarity that I didn't have in those moments. But as I've come to realize a lot of things, it's a lot easier to take everything I learned looking back at my life and now apply it to the future.
That's so
If that makes
powerful.
sense.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And I totally understand what you're saying. Sometimes when we're in the frame, we can't see the frame. You know what I mean? When we're inside the bottle, we can't see the label. But once we move past it, we can look back and reflect and then
Yeah.
learn from that. And it gives us more awareness of how to
Mhm.
cultivate this relationship, maybe with what you call sunshine moving forward. Because as you said, you're not out of the thick of it. Your children still have these disabilities. Your husband does, but he's improved. So, what would you say is the most important part of seeking sunshine? What does that give you, first of all? And then how does that radiate, do you feel, outwards to your family and your circle of people and into everything that you do in your life?
So there's this idea that what you focus on grows. Uh, it's a lot of people call it the law of attraction, but it is basically what Seeking Sunshine is all about. It's what you focus on is what you see in your life. And so if you are focusing on the color red, all of a sudden you're going to start noticing the color red all around you all the time. So if you're focusing on sunshine, it doesn't matter how much darkness is around you, you're going to start noticing even the tiniest little glimmers. You're going to start picking them up because that's what you're training your brain to see. Does that make sense? And so if you're training your brain, most of us, like biologically, we are hardwired to focus on the negative, like it's a safety mechanism because we're trying to keep ourselves safe. We're looking out for tigers all the time. Where is the tiger? It's coming to get me. I got to keep myself safe. And so we're like, where's the danger? Where's the danger? But the problem is that that danger is actually not really there most of the time. That danger where we're blowing it out of proportion. It's not quite as dangerous as we think it is. And so we're taking little bits of things that are, somebody said something to us and we're interpreting it as really awful when they didn't really mean it that way, right? And we're really internalizing it and we're blowing it out of proportion, right? But if we instead looked for the sunshine and we just completely ignored all of the darkness all the time and we just acted like it didn't exist and we only looked at the sunshine and we trained our brains to go right back there, right to the light, right to the beauty, right to the gratitude, we would see more of it. We'd be happier. We'd have more joy in our lives all the time because that's where we would go. And it's so funny because the more that I build my life around this concept, the more I'm like, oh my gosh, it applies to that and it applies to that and it applies to that. Like I'm starting to see how it applies to my kids. And it's like, if I want my kids to grow up to be happier, healthier, more wholesome people who believe in themselves, I need to start focusing on their good attributes. And I need to stop telling them what they're doing wrong. And I need to really start not just outwardly praising them for the things they're doing right, but I need to internally, myself, mentally, start only thinking about their good characteristics, their positive things, like their strengths, right? I need to be like, oh, but they do this. They're so good at this. My child is a leader, not the negative way of saying that, right? Like just go back to the positive. And if you only focus on the positive and you keep, every time your brain wants to slip back into the shadows, just go, nope, I don't want to look at that way. I don't want to look that way. I'm going back to happy, back to joy, back to gratitude. Eventually, you can train your brain to only see the beauty. And then what's going to happen is you'll be surrounded by beauty and joy and sunshine all the time. Not because the other stuff doesn't exist, but because you have actually changed your reality to be joyful. Does that make sense? Your reality changes because you changed your perception of it. That's where our power lies, is in changing our perception of reality. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, it makes total sense to me. I just give me a second here because again, you said so much and there's so much gold in everything that you said. And for me, when you were talking about your children, and I only have one and he's 15, and I know how powerful it is to acknowledge his goodness and his attributes and his characters, even if at moments in my life that I can get triggered or annoyed, like we all can, right? We're not perfect. We can come in and out of that. But I have seen the difference in my journey of learning to do that with myself and how I've been able to use that now for my son. And I know every mom says this, but I am so proud of my son. He is so incredible. He is into the gym. He goes to the gym every day after school. He has made a vow to never do drugs or drink. And I know to some people listening to be like, oh, that will never happen. And I'm like, well, maybe there is a possibility that he could break that vow, right? But there's also the possibility that what if that's just what he chooses? And either way, I love him. I love him unconditionally. But to know that my son is 15 and he's thinking this way, when that's not the norm, that is not the norm. So I understand the power of acknowledgement. I really, truly do. And acknowledging, first, we need to acknowledge also ourselves. I think that's what brings us back to knowing that we're good enough and that we are worthy of creating a life that we love despite circumstances, despite, things that maybe we can't always control. I wanted to pivot though back to when you were talking about always focusing on positivity and never on the darkness. and it's just my experience, and tell me if you can relate to this, is there was and has still been times in my life where I have wanted to avoid and resist the darkness or the negativity and the feelings. And that actually worked against me. It was when I acknowledged even that in me and gave myself permission to feel so that I could move through it and then have that hindsight and be able to reflect and go, okay, what did I learn from this? How did I grow? How did I become better? Like, what bigger was trying to emerge through me? At least for me in my life, I've had to do almost the opposite of that. I've had to embrace sort of all of it and all of me to bring the sunshine forth out from that, if that makes sense.
You are spot on. That is absolutely. And something about like turning towards the positivity, it's not necessarily like, it doesn't mean ignoring the bad stuff. I mean, it doesn't mean ignoring the bad feelings. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because it does mean ignoring the, it means ignoring the, I don't like the color yellow, so I'm going to pretend like it doesn't exist today. But it doesn't mean ignoring what's in your heart. It doesn't mean ignoring the feelings, because the most powerful way to move through the darkness is to sit with it. Like the best way. You have to allow it to be. And like when I was writing my album, like one of the first songs I wrote was a love song to apathy.
I love, oh my gosh, will you sing that for us at the end of this? Or at least a little snippet?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a love song to apathy, because I was sitting there in my kitchen going, my kids are destroying everything I love. And I mean like physical things, literally like breaking stuff. And I was like, they're autistic. They don't understand. Like, I can't get mad at them. I'm not allowed to feel feelings and feeling. This is not fair. Like, what do I do here? I'm going to turn to apathy because it's the easiest thing for me to do right now. And I was like, I know this is not a healthy coping mechanism, but for right now, it's better than getting upset at my kids who have no understanding of, why I'm upset right now. And it's better than me lashing out at them. So let me turn to this. And it was only in like embracing that I was able to like let it go,
Yeah,
and
that's
so
huge.
You have to process those emotions. It's essential. You have to let them sit. You can't shove them away. So when I say, ignore the bad and just focus on the good, I'm not talking about our emotions. I'm talking about circumstances. I'm talking about maybe attributes of other people that you can't control. Does that make sense? Talking about external, you can't just ignore your own feelings. Our feelings are indicators. They are indicators of how we are doing. And so if you have those negative feelings, instead of shoving them away, you go, oh, what is that telling me? How is this showing me something I wasn't realizing before? And how do I allow it to be for a minute before I go, okay? And then what's interesting is you can still sit in whatever's happening. You can still accept it and still look for the sunshine. Like you can still be grateful while you're feeling sad. Like you can still find the gratitude. And I'll give you, an example from my life. Like I said, my husband was disabled for a decade, and that was a really hard time. Like, I mean, we had a whole year where he was admitted to the hospital every month for a year for a different reason. And we frequently had tons of different doctors, and they all sucked. Maybe not all of them, but like most of them were like, we would go to the hospital, and he had a hemiplegic migraine, and he was paralyzed from half of his body, and he couldn't talk. And the doctor pulled me aside and was like, he's just drug seeking. He's faking this whole thing. And I was sitting there like, no, he's not. Like, I had to carry him here. And then they sent us home with nothing. And I had to carry him in from the car because they didn't believe us. And it was like, I live with him. You think I would, don't you think I would know? Like, if this
Wow.
was like what you think it is, like, I'm not an idiot. Like, I'm not going to just enable ridiculous behaviors. And like he was suicidal, and he was so depressed because he could not provide for his family because he was constantly collapsing, and it was an extremely difficult time. Well, and my favorite quote that I say all the time is it's from Frozen. It's in the song in Frozen. It's people make bad choices when they're mad or scared or stressed. And he wasn't his best self at that time. Let's just go with that. Our marriage almost didn't survive that period of time because he wasn't treating me his best, because he wasn't treating himself his best. He was not just physically disabled, but he was mentally disabled, and it was really hard. And yet I had this, as I looked back in hindsight, this realization of how I could flip the script on that entire time in our lives, when I realized that, oh my gosh, because he was disabled, my husband was able to stay home with me and our 3 autistic kids for most of their like formative years. And so every time we had like an IEP meeting or we had therapy, like he was there with me. He was there with me the whole time. He was able to stay home when our youngest was an infant, and I had to run off to all the meetings for our other 2, which were constant. Every time we had, it was so many meetings. We had diagnoses, and we had doctor's appointments, and we had all like constant meetings. Like, and I was in school trying to get my degree, and my husband was able to stay home with the baby, even though he was sick. Like, he was able to do those things. And then on top of that, so he was always there. He was always there with our kids. He knew how hard they were to raise. But like, unlike other families where the dad was gone all the time because he was working and providing for the family, my husband was there, and he saw how hard it was to raise our kids. He saw how hard I worked as a stay-at-home mom to try to sort of keep the house clean and to keep everything running and to do all of your doctor's appointments and all the paperwork and to do all the things. And so now that he's back at work, he's not taking me for granted. He's not coming home and going, why isn't everything done? Because he's coming home and helping, because he knows what it's like to be a stay-at-home mom, because he was home for a decade with me. And so when I, was able to flip the script on that whole really hard time in our lives, like, it's like putting on rose-colored glasses on purpose over the hardest time of my life. It's like choosing to see it in a different way. It doesn't take away how painful and hard it was. And yeah, there's a lot of forgiveness that has had to go into that, forgiving him for his behavior, but also understanding that he acted the way he did out of pain, and forgiving doctors and forgiving, a lot of things. But it's like, we can still, I can accept that it was really painful, and I can also change the way I look at it. And we can do the same in our lives now.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
I just want to, I feel like I need to step in here and just acknowledge you. I mean, my heart is like bursting right now. I might start crying, but the fact that you carried your husband, how many times, I don't know. The fact that you went through all of that with him and had doctors tell you that, it was just all in his head. And you're sitting here sharing this story for everybody to hear who's going to listen, that to me is a sign of resilience, a sign of the woman that you've become, a sign of an incredible mother. I have no idea what it's like to take care of a child with a disability, let alone 3. And I mean, I've had my own struggles as a single mom, but I have no idea what that's like. And for you to sit here and be able to go, okay, I have the choice to reframe that part of my life and that season of my life into something that's going to feed me and give me life and fuel me and fuel my future. That's how I'm hearing you share this, and that you've really acknowledged that that doesn't mean that there wasn't pain and it wasn't hard and that there's not forgiveness and all of that, but to take the gold out of it, really to look back and go, but he got to stay home and he got to see how hard I worked. And it really truly brings it back around for me that I'm a believer in, nothing happens by accident. There are no coincidences. Everything that we go through in life is for us. It's there for a purpose. It's there to grow us into the people that we're meant to become and serve us in some way, and for the greater good of everybody involved, including you, your husband, and your children, and whomever else comes across your path. So I just really wanted to acknowledge you. I don't know how much acknowledgement you get, but I know that we all need it, especially when you've had to step up and be all of that, Karaleigh. It's phenomenal and amazing. And I am genuinely proud of you for being here, sharing in this way, and that we can do it now. We can take those little steps. I really wanted to maybe bring it down to something really simple. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, can I say one thing before we move on? Just that as a podcaster who's interviewed a lot of people, I'm starting to recognize a pattern in myself and in all the people I've talked to, because I interview a lot of people who have been through really hard things. And what I've noticed is that once you've had the chance to process what you've been through, then you can start looking at it differently. If you haven't had the chance to process it yet, you're not ready yet. And that's okay.
Yeah, let's go there then.
Yeah, and it can take time, and it's okay for it to take time. And if you are wanting to start transforming your life, go a little further back. I promise there is something further back in your history that you can start transforming that's not as fresh and not as raw, and you could start transforming that. And if you start transforming something you've already processed, that will help you start transforming something that's a little more raw. But start with something that is not fresh. Start with something that you have had the time to not be emotionally attached to anymore. Don't start with the thing that just happened 3 months ago.
Yeah, this is so good. This is actually what I was going to ask you, is for people listening in who have never done this and never known where to start. To me, that speaks to, like, if you have a fresh wound that requires surgery or, bandages, you wouldn't rip that bandage off yet to expose it to air yet, because it's not at that stage in the healing process. So that is so brilliant what you just said, to start with things that you've already processed in your life. And I know for me, even, that my nervous system needs to be in a space where it feels safe enough to be able to regulate and experience something more profound out of something that I've been through. And that really speaks to something that you processed in your life, like starting. So it could be like the smallest thing. So I'm going to share this actually right now. So when I was 5 years old, I was with my mom in a grocery store. And I don't know if this might show my age, but there used to be these round pet chocolate bars, and they were like mint chocolate, and they had this green, beautiful foil. And my mom was in line paying for groceries, and I saw it, and I'm pretty sure it was like, oh, And I picked it up and I started unwrapping it and wanted to take a bite. And all of a sudden, somebody who was working there said, "Did your mom pay for that?" And I was just frozen in fear and I dropped it and I ran out. I was 5. Okay. I didn't understand what was truly happening. I didn't really understand the concept of my mom needs to
Yeah.
pay for this to have it. And I got grounded and I got a spanking. I was punished for that. And that stuck with me for such a long time. But I wanted to share this because that is something that I have processed in my life. And I was able to go back and really like sort of replay that over in my head and get my lessons and my takeaways from that, because a little incidents like that in my childhood had such a profound effect on me for so long, to the point where I wasn't allowed to ask for what I wanted, that I would get punished if I wanted something or desired something. And it's
Yeah.
just so profound when you do come to that place of processing, that you can go back. And if I hadn't had that experience, I wouldn't have learned what it was like to actually give myself permission to step into the fullest version of me and to start to really claim my inherent worthiness and why I'm doing this podcast even. So,
Yes.
do you have a story or something that you can share when you look back? Maybe not something so big from your life, but something smaller that you have processed that you reframed?
I have a lot of experiences from when I was a kid where I was telling people what to do. Um, I I tended to be the bossy one, and then I shut that down and I didn't talk to people. And I changed who I was. So let's see, when I was in kindergarten, so I was about that age, I was about 5, and those kids just would not come in from recess. And so I was late coming in from recess because I had to make sure all the other kids came in from recess because they were not coming in from recess. And there's there's a handful of experiences like that where it was like I was just trying to get them to do what they were supposed to be doing, and I should not have been in trouble, but I got in trouble too, right? Um, and it developed to the point where I stopped talking, and I
Wow.
decided that I was gonna be a shy person because people would like me better if I was shy. And I didn't have a lot of friends when I was in elementary school because I would either not talk to people or I was bossy and I couldn't kind of figure out the balance between the two. Like I was really, it wasn't like I was either too shy or too not shy. And I couldn't seem to, because I was always meant to be a leader, but I couldn't hone it in the way that worked socially. And so I never really stepped into that until I got to college. Like it took me a really long time to start owning that, especially starting podcasting was really a great way for me to start going, wait a minute, I love talking. I love telling people things. I love listening to people and guiding people, and it was like, oh, I get to do this. Just because I want to do it, I get to do it. And realizing that like my 5-year-old self was so just trying to help and was so misunderstood by everybody, and my 5-year-old self deserved more compassion than she got.
Yeah. Do you think that's because I do when you say that? I think that's part of the root of our unworthiness, is that we have these beautiful traits and we have these big personalities sometimes when we're little. And then when we're not understood by our environment and society, we think then that there's something wrong with us. And we start to slowly, back away, even from, again, I call that our fullest expression of ourselves. We came into this world to, be that and express that fully. And it's really those little gifts and that authentic voice of possibility that comes through every
Yeah.
single one of us but we start to, because we want to feel safe too, and we want to be loved. So we start to sort of contract that and hide that in certain ways. Do you agree that that's
Yeah.
probably the start of our
Yeah.
unworthiness?
Yeah. And it's such a big challenge for me right now as I see my youngest is such a leader and an overpowering leader at that. And it's like, how do I guide the youngest in our family who is very insistent that he's in charge of everybody around him?
Give him a microphone.
Right. And it's like, but he wants to be physically in charge of every single aspect of our home. And he's the youngest. And it's a difficult balance and something I absolutely need to improve upon as a mom, where I'm recognizing that like he's a leader, my husband's a leader, my daughter's a leader, I'm a leader. And how do you balance having a house full of leaders? Well, which is hilarious. And it's like you've got to give everybody a role. And it's funny being a parent when you're trying to recognize everybody's strengths and then you realize everyone has the same strengths because they're all your kids. They have the same strengths you do.
I think that's
Right.
wonderful. I can't remember where I heard it, but it was something around if everybody recognizes that we're all leaders, that eliminates so much in the world, because then it really, if we're all leading from a place of love and from a place of authenticity, then there isn't really room for competition and comparison. There's only, wow, look at that person over there leading their life in this way. So I think that's a beautiful, I don't know what I would do in your situation either. But at the same time, from the person outside looking in, I think, wow, like incredible. You've got this powerhouse of leaders, like amazing what you are all going to do with your lives. To me, that reminds me of people who, well, you're a singer when everybody's like ends up being musically inclined in the family. And that's so rare, but it's such a beautiful thing. I look at that the way you talk about everybody in your family being leaders. Like there's so much power in that.
Yeah, it's really true. Well, I know what's really funny is I gain clarity by saying things out loud. And that's one I've never said out loud before because I'm always lamenting the fact that not everyone in my house is a singer because my husband and I are both opera singers and our kids are like, nope, never touching it, don't want to sing. And so I'm always like, come on, you guys, sing. My husband and I both did theater and we're very like, yeah, my husband and I are going to be on stage together someday. Like we are both very outgoing, outrageous people, performers, and our kids are like, they don't want to sing, they don't want to perform. But like saying that out loud was like, oh, that's true. They're all leaders. I gained so much clarity from saying things out loud. And that was just one of those moments where I'm like, I've never said this out loud before, but bam, that was really true.
That's why podcasting is so incredible
Amazing.
too, right? To have really wonderful conversations. That's happened to me a lot too, where I said something out loud and then I'm like, whoa, where did that come from? And all of a sudden you have all this clarity and a new perspective on the thing that maybe you were battling with just a little bit, right? So that's beautiful. Is there okay, I actually have one specific question for you. From the title of my podcast, Winning the Divine Lottery, You Are Inherently Worthy. When I say that to you, what comes up in your heart?
The first thing that comes up is just like we're all divine, like we're all children of God. Is the first part is that we're all winning the divine lottery. Is like each and every single person has such a unique and divine purpose and talent, and you have to go find it. Like you've got to learn what your purpose is. And at first, like maybe you're going, oh, I don't know what that is. I've been looking everywhere. And my challenge to you is like, you already know it. That's my big challenge. It's like, I bet you already know it. Like, I was just saying this to someone else, but it's like we live in such a fast-paced world where we're always on autopilot. We're always go, go, go. And that is me for sure. I really have to work on that. But it's like, take some time every single day to like sit in silence. If meditation is not your thing, that's okay. Sit in silence, focus on your breath for a few minutes. That's basically what meditation is anyway, but whatever. Like, just stop being so afraid of sitting with yourself and just be with yourself and like know how amazing you are. And like, there's this great line that like, your pain is your purpose and your mess is your message. Like, you have something extraordinary within you to teach people. You really do.
Yeah.
There's something that only you have that is there to help, even if it's just one. If you could just change one life, wouldn't it be worth it? Like, isn't that enough of a mission in this life?
Yeah.
To save one person, to change their trajectory? Because that's huge.
Yeah, you and I are cut from the same cloth. I love how you answered that. It speaks so much to my heart. And the fact that you wrapped it into finding your purpose and sitting in silence, because for me personally, I have gotten the most growth by learning to sit in silence. And that is what meditation is to me, to be able to, and no distractions. There's guided meditations, which are wonderful for a purpose. But I'm talking about sitting here as me and you are right now, eyes closed, just listening. Because when you do that, you get to find out how you handle what happens all inside of here, how your thoughts pull you in this direction, how you react to when you get pulled in that direction. And it's taught me so much about myself, and self-awareness for me is the key for transformation. Because the more self-aware you become, the more you can fall in love with who you are, the more you can accept all of your quirks and everything and all the decisions that you've made up until now. It's just, there's so much juice and value in sitting in stillness. And I just wanted to speak too about you, how you said we're all children of God and we all have something extraordinary to give and to teach. And I'm a firm believer of that. And I'm a believer that just by us being born, the fact that we're here is a miracle. And from the time that we're babies, we change people's trajectories. We don't even have a conscious knowing of how many times our smile or our laugh made somebody's day. Do you know what I mean? Like, when we're babies and we're not even consciously aware, like, I don't know, I think about a mom pushing a little baby in a stroller in a grocery store, and there could be somebody who's in the thick of grief, and then all of a sudden they see the most innocent, pure face, and she or he smiles and laughs, and that person is like there's hope, there's still beauty, there's still a reason to keep going.
Oh, you're making me cry now. Because I'm just remembering of like, I say remembering, but like my parents talked about when I was born. And I had never thought about that before, because it's like one of the things I love to say about when we talk about self-worth. It's like, it's so easy for us to look at a newborn baby and be like, they have so much worth and value, and yet they've contributed nothing. But it was like, I was this perfect, beautiful baby because I was C-section, so my face wasn't smushed. My mom likes to joke that I was insisted on being C-section because I didn't want a smush face when I came. So I had bright red hair and fiery black eyes. And my dad wrapped me up like a burrito and carried me all over the hospital to show me off, because my dad also has fiery bright red hair and dark brown eyes. But like thinking of none of my kids got my red hair, so that always makes me a little bit sad. But thinking of me as a newborn, like with bright red hair and jet black fiery eyes, and carrying around the hospital, like, oh, I could totally see how that would bring people joy. I'm like
Yeah.
bringing myself joy, thinking of like me as a newborn baby. Like, can you bring yourself joy thinking of yourself as an innocent newborn baby and just like the energy that a newborn baby brings to a space? Like, it is pure and fire at the same time. It is.
And yeah. And coming back to that place to understand that we're contributing simply
By
because we were
existing.
born. Yeah,
We're
because we were
existing.
born and we're here. And that little one, sometimes I often, like when I have to do a forgiveness piece or something in my life, especially when it's around me, but you can use this for other people too. It's going back to like the youngest age possible that I can visualize myself in. And when you can visualize yourself as a newborn baby and hold her in your arms and look into her eyes and her precious face and literally be like, can you forgive her?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. Well, and I have to tell you this as energy was coming up, I have to tell you this thing that was some of my greatest clarity. Okay, all of my greatest clarity comes when I'm talking to my husband, because he still really struggles a lot with his mental health. And right now he has a job, but he's doing amazing. My husband used to walk on a cane, and he was collapsing all the time, and now he jogs for fun sometimes, and he has this corporate job, and he couldn't work for like a decade, and so like it's amazing that he's doing this well, but he struggles with this job, and he was putting on his work shirt, and he was like, I feel like I'm labeling myself and I don't like it, and I feel trapped in this corporate job, and it feels really gross because he's gone for a decade without a job, and all of a sudden we're going on a year now in this job, and he was like, how am I supposed to, because he's also really, really spiritual. He's going, how am I supposed to represent God when I'm here labeling myself as this company? How am I supposed to do that? And I was like, it's your energy. They can feel your energy the moment they walk into your office. They can feel your energy. They can feel it wrapping them up in a huge, loving hug if they're willing to accept it. If they're not, then they're not going to feel it, and there's nothing you can do about that. But those people who are willing to accept it will walk into your presence without you saying a single word, and they will feel your energy. And that is all it takes for you to influence them and change their lives. That's all it takes. It doesn't take you talking to them about God or anything. It doesn't even take you speaking a single word. All it takes is your presence.
yes.
And that's true for all of us.
Yes.
Your existence, your
Yes.
energy has such an effect on people, and you don't even realize it. And so like something we need to be more careful about is that when we are living in that gratitude, sunshine place, when we are taking care of ourselves, when we're doing self-care and we're being selfish and we're putting our own needs first, that energy we're giving off is love.
Yes.
And
Oh,
beauty. And then people can feel it. And then they're like, whoa.
Oh,
And when you're not taking care of yourself and you're giving and you're over giving to people and you're trying to people please, and then you're bitter and you're angry, the energy people are feeling from you is gross.
you just took me to church. You really did. the whole time I was listening to you, my heart just kept expanding and butterflying, and I couldn't help it. I had to throw my hands up in the air and be like, hallelujah, because she said love. She said, you said what I live by. I'm committed to love. And that means no matter where I go or what I'm doing, that is the place I have to anchor myself in over and over and over again. And you brought it full circle to where we started, because at the beginning I said, it doesn't matter what you say or the words you're using. It matters the place that we're coming from, that energetic, that vibration, that frequency of what you're in. And the fact that I really want to bring this to a close, because I think this is an amazing way to close this episode with you, and ending with a song if you're open to it. But what I want to say is that our presence, again, recapping that our presence, the fact that we exist, our presence is so valuable. And that's how we contribute to other people, by being present, which your husband did for you in that 10 years, even though he wasn't at his best. It's just so beautiful. And I love words. I love play on words. But when we talk about presence, I think about opening presents under the tree at Christmas. It's the same thing. The more present we can become by being so aware and in the moment and in the now, which is really all we ever have, we are giving so many gifts to so many people. Some we're aware of and we get to, experience and witness that, but other times it goes unknown. And to me, that's the beautiful mystery of life. And that's God's work in action, and that love behind the scenes that's always at play. Is there any last words that you wanted to say to that? Or can I ask you, is there a verse from a song that's on your heart right now that you would grace us with and bring this whole thing to a close?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the words. Seeking Sunshine is my single. It is my album. It is my podcast. It's my mantra, right? It is my thing. And I'm sitting here like, I'm gonna forget half the words to that dang song, even though it's my intro to my thing. Whatever, I'll sing it anyways.
Just roll with it. If you have to make some words
I'm sitting here like, what?
We want the real you.
I know I'm the worst at words. That's why I'm like, I need to perform this live more often so I remember the words. Okay, so Seeking Sunshine is I love it. I love it. All right, so it goes there are times when life just brings you down, 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 down to the ground, and it's hard when you see the light, because things don't look so bright. And now it's time to reframe and retrain your brain. It's time to look for the good. You know that you should. Why don't you join me? Because I'm seeking sunshine. I'm seeking sunshine. I'm seeking sunshine. Oh, 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 I'm seeking sunshine. I'm seeking sunshine. I'm seeking sunshine. I'm seeking sunshine.
Woo! Oh,
I remember most of the words.
Oh, wow. Sitting in front of you, hearing you sing is completely different. It's your presence. Like, your presence is everything. That had me going. I love how it's so upbeat too. I really, really do. Okay, Karaleigh, where can people find you? Please share. Yeah,
my website's KaraleighGarrison.com. Everything is on my website. On social media, I'm Karaleigh Garrison.
Oh, beautiful. And your album can be found Anywhere?
Everywhere.
Spotify?
Yeah, it's everywhere. Spotify, Apple, it's Seeking Sunshine. And my podcast is Seeking Sunshine.
Awesome. Well, it's been, this is so good. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day and
You're
sharing
welcome.
your brilliance and your radiance and your sunshine. That's who you are. Like, that is just, if you changed your name to Sunshine, I would totally get it.
Thank you. And thank you for having me.
It was an honor.